Namaste and welcome to Nepal Conversations. Nepal Conversations is a podcast series where we talk to scholars and researchers about the interesting work on various aspects of Nepali society. This third series of Nepal Conversations will focus on unpacking the status of social science research and teaching in Nepal.
In today's Nepal Conversations, we are pleased to welcome Dr. Amina Singh. Dr. Singh is currently a member of the University of Nepal Development Board, an initiative to establish a new liberal arts based university in Nepal. Dr. Singh worked as a development consultant for almost a decade, conducting program assessments, evaluation, and studies in Nepal. She completed her doctoral studies in education philosophy from Center for Research in Learning and Change from the University of Technology, Sydney, Australia. She worked as a full-time faculty at Kathmandu University School of Education and is currently an adjunct faculty at KU School of Management, teaching at graduate level. She also serves on the board of Teach for Nepal. Namaste, Amina ji. Welcome to Nepal Conversation. So I wanted to start with a general question. Much of your academic work in current work in Nepal has focused on examining and challenging the kind of exclusionary nature of Nepal's research and teaching environment. And if you could share a little bit about your thoughts on some of these, dominant socio-political institutional norms, practices that need to be challenged or even changed to make our research and teaching environment more inclusive. If you could share some of your thoughts and experience on that, and we can continue from there.
Okay, thank you, Nimesh. I assume when you say research and teaching environment, I assume you're talking about the higher education domain in Nepal.
Yes.
So when we talk about exclusion with regards to research and teaching, I think we have to then look at the foundation. Much of the problem then starts from our broader school education system. Who gets to go to school, what the school environment is like, what's the quality of teaching and education in school, and who then gets to go on to university. And when they enter university, what kind of skills and knowledge, and particularly academic literacy, do they bring along? And I think that's where part of the problem lies with the exclusionary nature. My experience has been, teaching in higher education has been that when students that come out of our education system, our school education system, they enter higher education, that is where the biggest problem lies. The quality of academic literacy. What I mean by that is their ability to read, their ability to write, the critical abilities to analyze what they read and develop their own ideas and articulate their ideas. This is a problem not just because of the content of it, but also because of language. Language is a major problem, and I assume Umaji is well aware of that as well, because this is her. I'm aware that this is her area of expertise. The dominant language that is used in school education these days is either Nepali, but there's also this movement towards English as a medium of instruction, and it's valorized. But what we find is when students enter, higher education, they're neither proficient in English nor in Nepali. So that is one of the issues there. When we talk about the institution itself in higher education, then what I feel is that our institutions of higher education are not equipped to address this major concern. So that's the institutional problem. When you talk about the social political problem, then it is the language, but it's also about the social political positioning of the institution themselves. What kind of research practices happens in the institution, what is the space for doing research, and how research is funded in Nepal. I mean, one of the bigger concerns that people talk about is in the paucity of rigor and quality academic research that happens in higher education institution. And I mean, if I go in that, it's like the problem is it's kind of difficult to succinctly summarize the problem. But then why aren't we getting the kind of quality research out of institutions? And then it's also about, you look at, what kind of facilities are available, what kind of space is available for faculties and academics that are within the higher institution. So, so these are, in summary, these are my general thoughts at the moment.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aminaji. Let's just change a track a bit to the qualitative research that you've been doing for quite some time now. You've been teaching qualitative research in Nepal. What has been your experiences? We are especially curious to hear what are the opportunities and challenges that you have experienced in teaching qualitative research in Nepal.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, I mean, I think I should probably tell you how I ended up becoming a qualitative researcher. I don't think anyone kind of intentionally goes into academia thinking that this is the kind of research I want to do. Like this is the methodological approach I want to take. And so I did not intentionally become a qualitative researcher. When I was doing my PhD, what I realized is the kind of questions that I was raising and the issues I was problematizing, they basically required a qualitative approach as opposed to a quantitative approach. But having said that, what I did end up doing in my PhD was a post-qualitative approach. I took a post-qualitative method to inquiry. But when I came back and I started teaching, one of the issues in terms of if I were to talk about, I think you can look at it from both sides. It could be deemed as an opportunity, but it could also deemed as a challenge as well. Is the dominance of quantitative research, and I think this is not something that is specific to Nepal. I felt that this is there is a greater valorization, a legitimacy of what the positivistic paradigm and the quantitative research, that numbers do hold a greater significance. Numbers do matter. I find that same environment in Nepal. So one of the challenges that I do feel in terms of not just teaching, but also the institutional culture and environment is this kind of the greater valorization of quantitative methods as opposed to qualitative methods, and qualitative methods being deemed as a research approach of a lesser quality. One of the things I do when I teach in my class, on the first day, I ask students like, why are you here, and what is your idea about qualitative research? And sometimes I do get answers like, qualitative research is all about gof dili, it's about just telling stories and that's it. And there are some students who kind of say they expect to have it easier in qualitative research because it's all about telling stories. And these are students who find quantitative research difficult. So there is also this kind of perception among students that, if you're weaker in maths and you're not good at stats, then you can, do qualitative research. But what the students do find is, as they progress through the semester, that qualitative research is actually much harder. And so that is where the challenge lies. So the opportunity is there because there's not much in terms of teaching. There's still a dominance of quantitative methods. And I teach in the School of Management, and I teach in a course on public policy and Master of Philosophy in Management, where quantitative methods are like quite dominant. But one of the challenges I face is kind of goes back to the challenges I articulated earlier, is about the academic literacy skills. In teaching qualitative research, one of the skills, it does demand that the students that write qualitative research have a very strong command of language to clearly articulate the ideas, because the dominant method is an interpretive method. So to be able to kind of articulate your ideas, your arguments, substantiate them, you do need a very strong command of language. And that is one area, but then you also need to be able to kind of immerse yourself in the literature and, and with the reading. So because of that, I find a lot of students kind of struggle with doing qualitative research, especially in writing up qualitative research, because of the the limitations they face in academic writing. And then they say that it might, it would have been much easier to just, use SPSS and do a different kind of research. So that's been my experience so far.
Yeah, that sounds really good, and I can also see the link between this and how you were kind of telling about the primary education, how there's so much focus on mathematics also when we are in primary, like quantitative, those kind of roles. So it's also probably connected to how we are educated in those kind of foundational years, and our inclination to a certain kind of methodology. I also wanted to switch gear a little bit, and because I know you've also been part of different types of evaluation, impact evaluation type, implementation type of research funded by the government and also non-governmental organization. And just wanted to hear your thoughts about whether these kind of research, the evaluation and impact evaluation, it's a huge kind of uh, uh, market for that, if you will, in Nepal. So whether these kind of research, do they call for engagement with social science concept that or theories, or are they limited? Are they limited in their approach in terms of, coming up with more applied or practical recommendations and impact? So what has been your experience in terms of whether there is a scope to integrate social science concepts into evaluation or implementation research? If you could share a little bit on that.
Thanks, Nimesh. Well, prior to entering academia, I did work as a development consultant in Nepal for a number of years, and I've continued doing some of that work, although I don't do as much as I did before. And most of the work that I've done in the last couple of years has been of qualitative nature. So even if I do an evaluation, it's very much towards kind of based on, often we do use mixed methods, but there is this kind of qualitative dimension to evaluation as well. But and part of that is also, I think, this kind of growing movement or this shift globally in terms of looking at change in a very different way, understanding development in a different way, and not just quantifying change, but also kind of looking at how it actually impacts human lives. And so for that, I think there has been a shift even globally in the development discourse on like taking a more narrative approach to doing impact evaluations. With regards to integration of social science concepts into the evaluation approach itself, a lot of it kind of depends on the project design itself and to what extent some of these concepts have been integrated into the project design. And what I often find, well, speaking about the context of Nepal, what I often find that how in terms of the scope, it depends on how the project was designed in the first place. What I mean by that is a lot of the concepts that get injected into the development discourse within Nepal have always kind of been imported from the outside. So you always see these waves of different terminologies. There was a decade where empowerment was a buzzword, and in human rights, in a lot of these concepts that are kind of related to human rights, the human rights discourse is there, and then there are these discourses around democracy are there, and so they do have some kind of grounding in social science concepts. But what I believe is by the time they enter the development discourse and become part of a project design and become part of the implementation level, some of these words kind of lose their meaning and their currency. And the people that are working on the ground, one of the questions I have, to what extent do they actually kind of go deeper into these? To what extent do they actually explore the meaning of what it actually means. And because, because as an interpretive, is a quality researcher, one of the things that we do look at is the meaning making process, right? So, so I'll just give you an example. For instance, like when we look at, in a lot of the governance, there's a lot of work that's been going around, especially after 2015 or 2017, after, we became a federal nation. There's a lot of projects that kind of focus on strengthening local subnational governance and local capacity. So this whole discourse, I mean, although the discourse of good governance started in the 1990s, it still persists these days. So, there's a lot of kind of, enhancing government. And so there's this another word, accountability. And I know, Nimesh, you've kind of done work in this area as well. So accountability is a major word. And I mean, it does come from, literature on governance, and so on, and political science and all that. But when I do evaluation, I do, I talk to the different stakeholders involved. And it's always interesting to understand how people understand these ideas around, what accountability means, and how they look at it in practice, and how the idea of accountability is also embedded in the project design, especially for the projects that are meant to enhance accountability and at the local level. So although the concepts are used there, I do feel that they do get dilated, and I sometimes wondered, like, well, is there a local level discourse to even understand what do we mean when we use these words? So I think that, so the educator in me always has this temptation to kind of deconstruct these meanings, even when I get an opportunity to engage in, in community groups at the grassroots level. So that has been my experience so far. I also want to add to that is, it's like some of these words, the social science concepts, they kind of emerged out of a very different kind of socio-political cultural context. And when we do adapt it to the Nepali context, how does the meaning get reinterpreted and reconceptualized in the Nepali context? I mean, a classic example is secularism, and I think I don't want to go into the details of that, but what does it mean to be a secular state? There is one particular idea, but the way it's been interpreted, even in our constitution, it has shifted. So, so that, I mean, as a researcher, I think that's what I do get fascinated with. Where do these ideas come from, and how they, how they kind of build discourses in the context of Nepal. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aminaji. Recently, those of us living outside have also been following the exciting news on this new institutional development on higher education in Nepal, especially about the University of Nepal. You have been actively involved with the University of Nepal Development Board. Can you tell us a bit more about this and your vision for this university?
Mm. Well, it's actually not just my vision; it's a collective vision. It's so, yeah. So thank you for asking this question. I've been part of the University of Nepal initiative since 2019, and the beginning of 2019. It's a very what we would like to call it a very grassroots led initiative, and what we mean by that is there are a lot of individual people who have they're professionals, they're like doctors and engineers and educators and everyday people, business people, civil society leaders, that all kind of came around this mission, feeling the need for a different kind of university in Nepal. One of the questions that we get asked a lot is, what's the rationale for yet another university in Nepal when we already have 12 universities, and there are a couple still in the pipeline. There are I think about 4 universities in the pipeline. So why do we need yet another university? So when I heard about this university, what attracted me was 2 things, and I was convinced about this proposition based on my own experience, working in higher education in Nepal. First is, the need to bring a radical shift in how we do teaching in higher education from the underground level, and teaching and research. Both of them, they go together. Second was the need to then establish a different kind of institution to enable that to happen. So the problem is not just, when we talk about the problems of higher education in Nepal, we talk about how bad the teaching is, and how the higher education system has become a machine for producing unemployment. I think we do not engage into the discussion on the institution itself, and the only dominant discourse is how the institution is politicized. I think that's the politics has kind of ruined higher education. But we don't talk about the institutional mechanism. And me coming from a background of organization development, I have a tendency to look at what is the university built like, what is it set up like, and how conducive is that institution to kind of give that space for faculty members and researchers to do the kind of things that they need to be doing to then have the kind of a higher education that we would like to have. I think one of the benefits I've had is I've been very privileged, and all of my higher education studies have been outside of Nepal, and I've kind of been exposed to a different kinds of institutions. Not saying that we need to kind of bring those kind of institutions design and bring it here, but I think what we do need to look at is kind of making a new kind of institution that kind of works in the context of Nepal. And then one of the things I keep on reminding myself is this university is the university where students, young people that graduate from the school system of Nepal, they are the ones that are going to be our students. So we have to keep that in mind, and keeping in mind all the other problems that I've kind of discussed earlier, the literacy rates, and how prepared are they to kind of enter into higher education. So those were the two things that attracted me: the possibility of having a conducive environment, and the possibility, the excitement that comes with the idea of starting a new institution that will enable this. So that's how I joined it. Right now, I think in 2020, the cabinet passed a what we call a formation order to kind of establish the development board for the university. So it has a tenure of about 2 years. Within the 2 years, this board, it's a 15-member board. The board is assigned with the responsibility of doing all the foundational work to start the university, and that includes drafting the bill to be tabled in the parliament, the University Act. So once the act is approved to the parliament, then we can officially start the work, start the business of the university. So that's the process we're in right now. In terms of the vision for the university, the kinds of what we're thinking about, it's going to be, we're using the term liberal arts university, but what we have found is, because of the overwhelming, the current discourse in higher education in Nepal is all around vocational and technical education. And so when we talk about liberal arts, there's always space for misinterpretation. So we use that word, but we also kind of explain it as a broad-based education. So what we're doing is we're designing the undergraduate program to be a broad-based program where students get exposed to different disciplines, so they don't kind of get caught in one disciplinary silo. And so they will have like first 2 years of a core curriculum where there'll be students will get a taste of different kind of disciplinary subjects, and then the third year and the fourth year, then they can kind of streamline into their major areas. So we're still in consultation stage. We're still kind of working on what will be all these majors. At this moment, we're also having talks about making these majors more interdisciplinary, and not making disciplinary majors, but making more interdisciplinary majors. So that's the conversation that's still happening in the team right now. We're working on it, but there's also this other question of where are we going to find the kind of faculties that we need. one of the things we're thinking is there are quite a few people in Nepal, so we will have to do rigorous training and development. But one of the opportunities that we do see is there has been there's this increasing group of Nepali academics in the diaspora that have been doing amazing work around the world in different institutions around the world. So one of the things that we're also thinking about is that this will also open up opportunities for those, who want to come to Nepal and work in Nepal, that there will be a new kind of institution for individuals like that. So in a nutshell, that's where we are at the moment.
That sounds really exciting, Amina ji. And so on your last point about the opportunity that might, come up for sort of academic who are in diaspora, for both for people who are from Nepali origin, but also beyond, because we know quite a few people who've been quite closely and quite optimistically looking at this development. I know it's in the early stage of development, but how do we get in touch? Like, how do we know what's going on and explore some of these opportunities? Do you already have a plan in place for that, or is it still being discussed, particularly targeted to Nepali diaspora who are working in academia and beyond?
I mean, right now, over the last couple of years, I think one of the I think really good and encouraging achievements we've had is the that we've been able to reach out to a network of enthusiastic academics from around the world, and these are both Nepali nationals and other nationalities as well. There has been a very, very keen interest and huge support from people all around the world, and we've been really, really privileged to have that as well. We also have been working in collaboration with Academics Without Borders as well. They've been really, really instrumental in supporting us and guiding us in many areas. We've also been collaborating with many academic institutions from around the world as well, and through that we've also kind of built a network with a lot of Nepali academics. A lot of this has been through a word of mouth and through personal connections. But I suppose soon when when the time comes, we will also start actively reaching out to some of the people who are keen to kind of join the initiative in a much more substantive way by contributing. For that, we do have a website right now. It's www.uon, which stands for University of Nepal, edu.np. If you go there, you will be able to get our contact, but you could also write to me.
And I think that's a really wonderful way to end, because you mentioned about collaboration, and I know you've been involved in various forms of collaborative research projects, including impact evaluation projects that you mentioned earlier. And so just wanted to end with like your kind of general thoughts on the the general culture of collaborative research in Nepal, and also maybe you can link that to the University of Nepal vision of what you aim to do, how you probably seek to change some of these existing norms and practices around collaborative research. So if you could share some of your thoughts on that, that would be great.
Yeah, I think collaboration is, I mean, it sounds very appealing, and I know it's a word that comes up a lot, and it's a very necessary thing. But I think in terms of what my personal experience and observations with regards to collaboration has been, going back to my earlier point, a lot of the issues around collaboration are institutional. What I mean by that is, and when I talk about, I'm talking about the global North-South collaboration or collaboration with institutions outside of Nepal, right? When an institution come from the global North or from other parts of the world seek collaboration, one of the issues that I do find is what is the institutional capacity of the institutions on our side to actually even utilize the funding, the scale of fund or the management capacity. So that has been one of my concerns. I've been in situations where I think sometimes we do not have that administrative capacity to kind of manage the funds. So that is one thing. But I can't kind of generalize it, but that is a concern given all these accusations or kind of the discourses around the politicizing and of higher education. Having said that, there has been a lot of work, collaborative work that I see that actually kind of led at an individual level by academics between North-South, but even within South-South and even within Nepal as well. So I think that culture is kind of slowly increasing, but then I think what we need to also look at is what is the nature of collaboration? What is the imperative of collaboration? I think quite clearly in many cases, it is for resources, sharing of resources, pooling of resources, because universities in Nepal, especially if you are, Tribhuvan University does have access to funds, but the other universities, there are public universities in Nepal, for instance, if I talk about Kathmandu University, does not get that generous amount of support from the government. So the academics within Kathmandu University, they do have to kind of raise their own grants and funding. So academics in Nepal do work in a very resource scarce environment. So that is one issue. So a lot of the collaboration is around, the resource pooling. But then I think one of the other things is also about, sharing of ideas, collaboration between different institutions in terms of different kinds of research practices, collaboration to create that synergistic effect. One of the other things where I feel the opportunity, and this is what excites me with regards to University of Nepal, is creating that environment for, we use this word a lot, but I think, if you were asked, I think we're still not clear what we actually mean by that is the terms multidisciplinary research and interdisciplinary research. What does that actually look like in practice? Multidisciplinary collaboration and interdisciplinary collaborative research. I think for that kind of work to happen, we still have a long way to go in terms of the institutional capacity of it. But if you look at it at the grassroots level, there have been, outside of academia, there have been a lot of not-for-profit foundations, research institutions that have been doing that kind of work as well. But a lot of this work is outside of the university. And I assume, and my understanding has been that happens because of the lack of space and the culture and the practices for that kind of work to happen within the university itself. So that's the other thing when I talk about creating the kind of institution that is necessary for the kind of education and teaching and research that we imagine. That is what I was also kind of hinting at earlier in my remarks. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's exciting, and that's where I see the role of the University of Nepal too, right? Playing a much more institutional, facilitative role to promote this kind of research culture. And I absolutely agree with your kind of point about the sort of institutionally this has been lacking, or people have been individually they've been doing it. So that brings us to the end of the conversation. Thank you so much, Amina. This has been really exciting. We really enjoyed talking to you. And thanks for all the great work that you are doing with the University of Nepal and beyond.
Thank you so much for taking the time out for Nepal Conversations, Aminaji. We really, really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Umaji, and thank you, Nimeshji, for this opportunity and for sharing my ideas. Thank you so much.